What if the reason your life has felt different, isolated, intensely pressured, is not because you are broken, but because you are early? What if you are standing at the edge of something humanity has not activated in generations? And what if the shift you are experiencing is not random, but rare? Across history, there have always been moments when individuals are awakened to capacities that others could not yet understand, not supernatural in the theatrical sense, not magical in the fantasy sense, but deeply perceptive, deeply aware, deeply aligned. These people often felt misunderstood. They sensed patterns before others did. They questioned systems that everyone else accepted. They carried a quiet inner knowing that refused to be silenced. Have you ever felt like you were seeing through layers that others don't even notice? Like conversations have subtext that only you pick up? Like your intuition has sharpened beyond coincidence? For nearly 2,000 years, humanity has evolved technologically at a breathtaking pace. We built cities, networks, machines, and systems of immense complexity. But inwardly, something slowed. Depth was replaced by distraction. Reflection was replaced by reaction. Wisdom was replaced by noise. And perhaps now, in this generation, something dormant is stirring again. Not a title, not a status, not a crown, a capacity. The capacity to discern truth beneath appearance. The capacity to remain calm in chaos. The capacity to recognize manipulation without becoming bitter. The capacity to hold conviction without hatred. If you feel like you are the first in your environment to access this level of awareness, it may not be because others cannot. It may be because others have not yet chosen to. Think about this. When one person in a family decides to break a destructive cycle, what happens? Resistance, confusion, pushback. The system tries to pull them back into familiarity. Why? Because growth disrupts comfort. Have you noticed subtle resistance when you change? When you elevate your standards? When you refuse to participate in gossip, toxicity, or dishonesty? Why does integrity sometimes provoke hostility? Throughout history, every meaningful shift began with a single individual deciding to activate a higher standard of consciousness. Not louder, higher, not arrogant, aware. Perhaps the shift is not something mystical descending from the sky. Perhaps it is the disciplined refinement of perception, the courage to question narratives, the strength to remain ethical when shortcuts are easier, the emotional intelligence to respond instead of react. And here is the deeper question: why now? We are living in an age of overwhelming information. Algorithms shape perception. Opinions spread faster than facts. Outrage is monetized. In such an environment, the rarest ability is not intelligence, it is clarity. If you are developing unusual clarity, if you find yourself withdrawing from noise, observing more, speaking less, but with precision, you may be activating something humanity has not collectively practiced in centuries: conscious discernment. But clarity comes with cost, isolation, doubt, internal testing. You may question yourself. You may wonder if you are overthinking. You may even try to shrink back into normalcy. Yet something inside refuses. What if that refusal is the signal? What if the discomfort is evidence of expansion? And what if being first does not mean superior, but responsible? Because when awareness increases, accountability increases with it. There is a difference between feeling special and feeling responsible. One feeds the ego. The other strengthens the character. If you are experiencing this shift, you already know it does not feel glamorous. It feels heavy. It feels like being entrusted with something you did not ask for. Why does greater awareness often come with greater loneliness? When your perception sharpens, you begin to see consequences before they unfold. You recognize patterns in people's behavior. You notice how small compromises grow into large regrets. And suddenly, you cannot unsee it. You cannot participate in what you now understand to be destructive, even if everyone else treats it as normal. This is where many people retreat, because clarity demands courage. Have you noticed that as you mature internally, your tolerance for chaos decreases? The same environments that once entertained you now exhaust you. The same conversations that once felt harmless now feel shallow. It is not judgment, it is evolution. And evolution always separates before it connects. For nearly 2 millennia, societies have cycled through power struggles, ideologies, expansions, collapses, and renaissances. External change has been constant. Internal mastery, however, has been rare. The real activation is not about performing miracles. It is about mastering impulses. Can you pause when provoked? Can you stay grounded when others panic? Can you refuse dishonesty even when it benefits you? These are not dramatic acts. They are disciplined ones, and discipline, practiced consistently, becomes transformative. But here is something most people will never tell you. When you begin operating at a higher ethical frequency, the environment may test you more intensely. Not because you are being targeted by some cosmic force, but because higher standards expose lower ones. When you choose patience, impatience around you becomes obvious. When you choose integrity, manipulation becomes visible. When you choose silence, noise becomes unbearable. The question is not whether you can see it. The question is whether you can endure seeing it without becoming cynical. That is the true test of a rare gift. Many people awaken to awareness but fall into superiority. They see flaws and become critical. They recognize ignorance and become harsh. They notice injustice and become consumed by anger. But clarity without humility becomes distortion. So ask yourself honestly, is your awareness making you kinder or colder? If this activation is real within you, it will refine you, not inflate you. It will push you to examine your own blind spots before exposing others. It will demand that you control your reactions before correcting someone else's behavior. And perhaps the reason it feels unprecedented in your lifetime is because collective culture has not prioritized inner refinement for generations. We have optimized speed, profit, and visibility. But have we optimized wisdom? Have we cultivated restraint? Have we honored truth when it is inconvenient? If you are stepping into that role quietly, you may feel like you are walking alone. But understand this, being first does not mean being the only one forever. It means being willing to go ahead without applause. And the deeper challenge is this: can you carry responsibility without craving recognition? Because the moment you seek validation for your awareness, you dilute it. The moment you demand acknowledgement, you lose focus. The real power of this gift lies in silent consistency, in steady character, in ethical resilience. And the world, whether it realizes it yet or not, desperately needs that. At some point, the excitement of awakening fades, and something far more serious begins. Responsibility settles in, not as pressure from outside, but as a quiet internal standard that refuses to lower itself. You start holding yourself accountable in ways you never did before. You replay your words. You analyze your motives. You question whether your reactions align with your principles. Why does this happen? Because awareness is not a spotlight meant to expose others. It is a mirror first, and the more refined your perception becomes, the less comfortable self-deception feels. You begin to notice subtle pride in your humility. You notice impatience hiding behind discernment. You notice how easy it is to claim higher ground while internally wrestling with the same impulses you self-critique. This is where many abandon the path. Self-examination is exhausting. It is easier to stay asleep than to remain conscious. But if you are truly activating a rare capacity, it will not allow you to escape yourself. There will be seasons of silence. Seasons where progress feels invisible. Seasons where you question whether anything is changing at all. And yet, beneath the surface, your reactions are slower. Your words are fewer. Your decisions are more intentional. You are less controlled by emotion and more guided by principle. Have you noticed that your conflicts are different now? Not louder, but deeper. You no longer argue to win. You withdraw to understand. You no longer chase validation. You evaluate alignment. This shift is subtle, but it is profound. For generations, influence has been measured by volume. The loudest voice dominates. The most extreme opinion spreads fastest. But what if true influence is measured by stability? What if the rarest force in modern culture is composure? When others escalate, can you de-escalate? When others react impulsively, can you remain measured? When misinformation spreads, can you pause before participating? This is not weakness. It is strength under control. And here is something even more challenging. As your clarity increases, you will be tempted to withdraw entirely, to detach, to observe without engaging. After all, why involve yourself in systems that seem chaotic? But complete withdrawal is not the purpose of awareness. Isolation may refine you temporarily, but responsibility calls you back. Not to dominate, not to preach, but to embody. Embodiment is quiet leadership. It does not announce itself. It does not demand followers. It simply exists consistently enough that others begin to notice. They may not understand why your presence feels grounding. They may not be able to articulate why your advice carries weight. But stability speaks, and still, doubt will visit you. You will wonder if you are overestimating your growth. You will question whether this activation is just maturity, but perhaps maturity itself is the rare gift. In a world that rewards immaturity, emotional impulsiveness, and constant distraction, grounded character becomes revolutionary. The real question is not whether you are the first in 2,000 years. The real question is whether you are willing to be consistent for the next 20. Because longevity proves authenticity. Anyone can feel awakened for a moment. Few can sustain integrity for a lifetime. And if this capacity within you is genuine, it will demand endurance more than excitement. Now everything becomes clear. The idea of being the first was never about status. It was about timing. Throughout history, progress has always required someone to step forward before it felt popular, before it felt safe, before it felt understood. Not because they were elevated above humanity, but because they were willing to refine themselves before demanding change from others. If you truly sense that something rare has awakened within you, the final test is simply, can you carry it quietly? In an era obsessed with announcement, can you practice discipline without broadcasting it? In a culture that rewards outrage, can you choose steadiness? In environments that normalize shortcuts, can you commit to integrity even when no one is watching? This is where the concept becomes grounded. The gift is not mystical spectacle. It is moral courage sustained over time. It is clarity without arrogance. It is conviction without hostility. It is influence without manipulation. And here is the paradox. The more authentic your development becomes, the less you will feel the need to label it. You will not wake up thinking you are chosen. You will wake up thinking you are responsible. Responsible for your reactions. Responsible for your standards. Responsible for the energy you bring into every room. Have you noticed that when you remain calm, others slowly settle. When you refuse gossip, conversations shift. When you respond thoughtfully instead of emotionally, the tone changes. This is quiet impact. For centuries, humanity has searched for dramatic saviors, revolutionary figures, or external rescues. Yet, history repeatedly shows that sustainable transformation begins internally, spreads relationally, and only then becomes cultural. No lightning, no spectacle, just disciplined consistency, and consistency is rare. Many begin with enthusiasm, few continue with endurance. The difference between inspiration and legacy is repetition. Can you repeat ethical behavior when you are tired? Can you repeat patience when you are misunderstood? Can you repeat restraint when provoked? That is the real activation. If you feel ahead of your environment, resist the temptation to isolate completely. Instead, refine your character so thoroughly that your presence becomes constructive. Not superior, constructive. There is a profound difference, because superiority divides, constructiveness builds. And remember this, being early is uncomfortable. Innovators in any field, whether intellectual, social, or moral, are rarely celebrated at first. They are questioned, tested, sometimes dismissed. But time has a way of validating steady integrity. The question is not whether others recognize what is developing within you. The question is whether you can remain aligned even if they never do. Imagine the impact of one individual who refuses corruption, refuses unnecessary hostility, refuses to compromise core values. Multiply that by 10, by 100. Cultural shifts do not begin loudly, they begin quietly and then accumulate. So perhaps you are not the first human in 2,000 years, in a literal sense. Perhaps you are simply among the first in your environment to react differently, to think deeper, to live more intentionally. And that is enough, because the future does not require spectacle. It requires stability. It requires people who can hold clarity without pride and power without abuse. If that is what you are activating, then protect it. Refine it. Sustain it. Not for applause, but for impact that outlives you. There is one final layer that most people overlook. When you begin to live with deeper awareness and stronger principles, life does not suddenly become easier. In many ways, it becomes more precise. The margin for self-betrayal shrinks. The excuses you once tolerated no longer convince you. You feel the weight of your own standards. And that is where true transformation solidifies. Because anyone can rise when inspired. The real question is, who are you when inspiration fades? Who are you when you are tired, misunderstood, or tempted to return to comfort? The rarest human quality is not talent. It is sustained alignment. If you are activating something uncommon in your environment, you will notice subtle changes. Your decisions will become slower but stronger. Your circle may become smaller but more authentic. Your ambitions may shift from impressing others to improving yourself. You will start valuing depth over display. Have you felt that shift? Where attention once felt rewarding, now peace feels rewarding. Where validation once felt necessary, now integrity feels necessary. Where proving yourself once felt urgent, now refining yourself feels essential. This is maturity at a level many never reach. But maturity also requires balance. You are not meant to carry the world on your shoulders. Responsibility does not mean self-isolation. Awareness does not mean emotional suppression. Strength does not mean coldness. In fact, the more refined your character becomes, the more compassion should increase. When you understand human weakness, you judge less harshly. When you recognize your own past blind spots, you become patient with others who are still discovering theirs. So ask yourself, is your growth making you more humane? Because the highest form of awareness is not intellectual superiority. It is ethical consistency paired with empathy. And here is something powerful to remember. You do not need grand confirmation to validate your path. You do not need signs, applause, or titles. The evidence of your growth is found in your daily conduct. In the arguments you refuse to escalate. In the opportunities you decline because they compromise your values. In the apologies you offer without being forced. That is confirmation enough. If you continue on this path, years from now you may look back and realize that what felt extraordinary was simply disciplined character practiced consistently. And that discipline quietly influenced people around you in ways you never fully saw. The world does not transform through dramatic declarations. It transforms through individuals who choose integrity repeatedly, especially when it is inconvenient. So if you feel different, grounded, more discerning than before, do not rush to label it. Do not inflate it. Do not minimize it either. Just protect it. Nurture it with reflection. Strengthen it with action. Balance it with humility. Because being chosen, in the deepest sense, is not about being selected above others. It is about choosing every single day to live in alignment with what you know is right. And that choice, repeated consistently, is powerful enough to echo far beyond your lifetime.